What is up, guys? Delboy here. Is Lawrence Okolie becoming a hard sell for Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Sports? If you recall, when Lawrence Okolie turned pro, there was a certain level of excitement. Lawrence Okolie, although he had a relatively short amateur career, he did actually make the Olympics in Rio 2016, and more importantly, he was coming off the buzz that he dropped Anthony Joshua in sparring. That was actually his main selling point when he turned pro. And at this time, people were excited about Lawrence Okolie. And yeah, he turned pro, and for the first, few fights, he knocked over everybody that was put in front of him. He first went the decision against a guy called Blaise Menduo. Blaise Menduo is a good journeyman. Lawrence Okolie looked ragged, he looked a bit raw, but ultimately it was viewed as a good learning fight for him at the time. He bounced back with a couple of good knockout wins, and then he had his first step-up fight against Isaac Chamberlain. Now, going into this fight, there was a certain level of excitement amongst UK hardcore boxing fans. All was going well for Lawrence Okolie and Matchroom. But the fight played out and it was an absolute stinker. Clinch fest, holding, mauling, very little clean action, and Lawrence Okolie won the decision, but he didn't really win over many more fans, put it that way. A lot of people were very critical, but at that time I kind of got the sense that a lot of people gave him the benefit of the doubt. People kind of wrote it off as a one-off. It was a big step up early on in his career, and he was headlining VO2 in less than 10 fights. I think people were relatively forgiving. I know a lot of people out there weren't happy, but a lot of reasonable people were kind of forgiving. So the Chamberlain fight happens, doesn't look good, but he gets the win. His reputation is a bit damaged, but nothing too serious. After the Chamberlain fight, he then goes on to fight Luke Watkins for the Commonwealth Cruiserweight title. Luke Watkins at the time was undefeated, a bit of a puncher, decent fighter, and a lot of people liked that fight. Lawrence Okolie goes in there and actually looks really good and knocks out Luke Watkins. At this stage, I think Lawrence Okolie kind of satisfied the critics. He delivered a good, explosive performance. He got the knockout, and he looked quite good doing it. So at this point, Okolie kind of, regained some trust from the British boxing fans. And after the Luke Watkins fight, he then gets a fight scheduled with Matty Askin. This fight was on the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Povetkin. Now, this was a huge stage. Joshua is the most viewed fighter in the UK. This was the biggest possible stage for Lawrence Okolie. And leading up to this fight, a lot of hardcore boxing fans were very excited, including myself. I really liked this fight. Matty Askin has been a guy who has been around British level for quite some time. Just a really good domestic operator. And leading into this fight, I was very excited. But the fight plays out, and arguably it is the worst fight of the year. And this fight was viewed not only by basically hardcore boxing fans, but a hell of a lot of casual boxing fans. This fight damaged Lawrence Okolie's profile in a big way, in my opinion. I mean, I was watching this pay-per-view card with friends, all of whom are casuals, and they couldn't get over what they was watching. It really turned them off for the main events, and it kind of killed the night. It was a terrible fight, and let's be honest, Lawrence Okolie was very, very lucky not to get disqualified. In fact, he should have been disqualified, let's be honest. He was holding, he was rabbit punching, he fought a terrible fight, and it was a disgrace, to be quite honest. And he was very lucky that night. And that fight, in my opinion, has done a lot of damage to Lawrence Okolie. And ever since then, nobody's been talking about Lawrence Okolie getting back in the ring. Everybody on Twitter, on social media, has been extremely critical of Lawrence Okolie, and the buzz that was there when he turned pro just isn't there anymore. This guy is becoming a hard sell to British boxing fans, and I think Eddie Hearn does have a bit of a job on his hands. Lawrence Okolie is actually fighting this weekend. He's fighting on the Ted Cheeseman versus Sergio Garcia undercard. And Lawrence Okolie is fighting a guy I've never heard of in Hearn Miller. From the outside looking in, it looks like Eddie Hearn is trying to get a sacrificial lamb for Lawrence Okolie just to bowl over and look good against, because ultimately, like I said, the guy's reputation right now is at an all-time low. There's no excitement about Lawrence Okolie, and, you know, there's nothing quite like a brutal knockout to get fans excited again, and maybe that's what Eddie Hearn is trying to do with this Hearn Miller fight. Hearn Miller is American, he's in his 30s, I think he's in his late 30s, and he's coming in this fight on short notice. So, you know, it looks obvious to me that Eddie Hearn is trying to get a brutal knockout on Okolie's resume to kind of reignite some interest. But if that's not to happen, and Okolie looks bad again, and it's a horrible fight, then Eddie Hearn and Lawrence Okolie are in a tough spot. I mean, it's not like Okolie has domestic rivals to fight. It's not like he's got high-profile fights at the domestic level. No, the Matty Askins fight was the fight for him, and it was a dud. The Isaac Chamberlain fight was the fight for him, and it was a dud. These were the fights that were supposed to build his profile and build the excitement, but they acted in the absolute opposite. So, a bad performance against Hearn Miller, it would be very detrimental to his career. Obviously, a win is the most important thing, but I do believe a knockout for Okolie is important in this fight. I think he needs to knock Hearn Miller out, and he needs to look good doing it. If he fails to do so, he could be in a tough spot. And that could result in Lawrence Okolie getting chucked in at the deep end, because ultimately, if Matchroom don't feel they can make a star out of Lawrence Okolie, why not chuck this guy into a world title fight against an elite level cruiserweight when he may be not ready? You know, if they don't feel he's going to be a star, that could happen. You know, maybe they might just gamble and roll the dice and hope that winning a world title then turns this guy into a star. You know, who knows, but they are in a bit of a pickle at the moment, and yeah, Lawrence Okolie just needs to get a brutal knockout win over Hearn Miller and then go on from there. But yeah, how do you feel about Lawrence Okolie? Are you bored of him? Have you lost interest? Don't you like watching him fight? Just share your thoughts below. Tell me how you feel. Peace.